Hey everybody, welcome back to another Coalition Deep Dive. But before we do that, I want to start a short tradition where now we're gonna open up every video with last 2 or 3 days of Wargame. In case you don't know, well, first of all, if you don't like this, just skip ahead a few minutes, right? But in case you don't know, it's a daily Wargame, guess the unit type of game, where every day there's a different unit to guess, or you can just turn off the daily toggle and do whatever. Um, and the game will give you indicators, whichever unit you guessed, how close you are in each category. I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you see it once or twice, in case you've never played these games. But the plan now is, for me at least, to always do like the last 2 or 3 days of Wargame for each video, so that for one, I can make content off of it. I enjoyed it, and I hope some of you do. Plus, gotta showcase it. And if you don't like it or if you're not interested, you can just always skip ahead a few minutes, right? That way I don't spam the channel with like these short videos every day that nobody cares about if you don't care about them. But for those who like it, we can still do this. So yeah, if you want to do it with me or parallel or just ahead of me, you can always just, of course, go back on the calendar here to which day. So I'm recording this on a Saturday. So I'll do the last 3 days, including today. So I'll start with the 10th. All right, let's start with Leopard 2. It's 70 km off-road speed. That is interesting. It doesn't have a third weapon. It is either not in mag or not in armor or in neither. It has medium stealth, basically. It is smaller and has better optics than poor. It can't be infantry with 70 km. It also can't be helicopter or plane. So it's definitely a vehicle with less than 10 HP. So it's a Jeep. Is it like a... Okay, so supply truck wise, right? No, supply trucks would be in mech and armored. Yeah, okay. It's not a supply truck. It's something like some kind of ITO Jeep, like the AR-76 is actually pretty fast. It's like an M150. So one of these. It is 5 HP. It's actually a bit faster. It does not have a... Doesn't have a missile, but it's not that far off 30 points. What does it have then? It's also not in the vehicle tab. Oh, so it could be an AA truck. Kind of deal, like the hip Nerid, right? The one with... I presume it's this one, with a gun and missile. That's 25 points, for example. But better optics and poor. It is an Eastern Bloc. It's also not in the support tab, not in the vehicle tab. It's a... Oh, stealth! Medium stealth, I'm an idiot. I completely ignored the stealth, but it's a recon Jeep. Oh god. Okay, these are really... it's like a... Is that a recon Jeep? No, that's a supplied logistics, right? Oh, Aufklärungs-UAC KPV. It's almost... it doesn't have... Wait. It has worse than good optics. Wait. It's... Wait, 5 HP? Oh, it has a very good optics, right? Okay, okay, that helps because it's East German, so we can just search for Aufklärung. Wait, hold on, we did Aufklärung US. It's just not this one. Okay, thank God. Oh God, what an awful unit to guess. I'm happy it's the East German one because now it could just search for Aufklärungs. Fahrzeug, right? Oh, that's awful. All right, let's do Friday the 11th. Let's just guess with whatever was the solution last time. It is 5 HP again and 750 autonomy. It presumably has worse stealth than... yeah, worse stealth than medium. Good stealth would not be a Jeep. So it's a Jeep of some sort. Or like a 5 HP, but it's smaller or bigger. So it's probably not a UAC. let's go with like an Ito, like the air, not the air. Let's go with this one. 75 speed. Better optics and poor, but not in the recon tab. Also price up. Oh, this might be a CV. Potentially. Usually CVs are pretty much available in like deep CVs, but it might be like oh, what is it called? Is this the CV? I think this is the CV. Like the Chinese, not the logistics app, the Chinese boat CV. Would actually just we already knew, or now we know. It's actually worse than poor, not better. So it's bad optics actually. It's not in the vehicle type, not in the logistics type. Not okay. So it's like a Ural, something like this. It does have a weapon actually, so I knew it was not a CV. That was stupid of me. It is indeed in the support tab. Hypnorid this time around, maybe? Okay, I can take a hint, like reveal something, but I'm not gonna do that. It's not Poland. Alright, we know it. I'm just blind. We know it's China. Chinese support tab BM24. Either that or the PHL probably. There's a PHL. Yeah, okay. I don't know what I was thinking. Alright, let's do Saturday, which is today for me. PHL 63. Okay, it barely gives like nothing. Okay, it's more than 5 HP. Cheaper, slower, smaller, better optics, better stealth. Could be like an infantry, right? I think all of this means very likely to be an infantry. Also has 3 weapons. Basically has to be infantry. Let's go for Legion. Go for Legion 90. It's an MG, not an anti-tank weapon, not a primer, like different types of primer, right? It's not an assault rifle, I think is what this means. Not this is probably classified as an ATGM, right? I should have not gone for the Eric squad. It is 20 or 30. It is shock. It's elite speed. There's not a lot of light shock infantry at 20 points, so I'm gonna guess it's 30 points. Optics better than medium, so they're okay. It's a recon squad, which means that it has to be elite because there's no shock light recon infantry. Let's go for SBS, Stefan SMG. It's a saw. It's an SMG. Okay, it's not British. It could be Jäger. Oh, how? Ooh, I just realized. Yeah, it's very hard to guess this umlaut. Well, it's not an umlaut, but the thing here. It's 75, so it's pretty old. It's not that. What else is there? Base with SMG, right? Base Specialis, the Czech ones, they don't have an SMG. Navy SEALs don't have an SMG. Formosa do, but they don't have an anti-tank weapon. It's specifically Carl Gustav, even I just realized. Okay, what else is there with elite Carl Gustav? There's not much left. Yeah, what else is there? Turkionsa? But the Turkionsa don't have an SMG. Unless carbines for some reason are classified as an SMG. But like, what else is there with from 70 plus? John thinks Turkionsa would be 75. What else is there? Special Force with the Carl Gustav. Am I like? What about the DLC? No, I don't think any of the DLC have them either. Commonwealth has SBS. NORAD has Rangers, but they're slower. Wow, I'm actually like Langer DG. KCT. There you go. Alright, that was a good one. I think I did pretty alright here. Alright, that's the last 3 days. Let's actually get into coalition review, right? Today we're gonna take a look at... I'm gonna go Yugoslavia. It's red for. Not Entente, because we already went over the Czech units with Eastern Bloc. Yeah. Right. Yugoslavia, of course. Very, very strong. Even stronger in Entente, but it's certainly capable on its own. It is gonna miss some stuff. Entente definitely gives them some nice stuff, right? Especially in the planes, right? They give you some seed, they give you a very good HE bomber, they give you Moderna for team games for secondary heavy tanks, some really nice lead infantry in the recon tab, Mi-17s. But at the same time, they don't give you anything crucial. However, the extra 5 activation points or the availability bonus you get, which isn't huge, don't give you that much either. Usually you're better off playing on top. But it doesn't mean by any means that Yugoslavia is not capable on their own. Logistics hub is fairly unspectacular. The Gazelle is one of 2 squads that actually has the Gazelle as a transport available. It's actually a pretty good helo transport because it's very, very fast and very small. Literally very small, right? Which gives you your helicopter a reduced chance of getting hit. Other than that, nothing crazy. Worth pointing out that they're one of the few infantry squads that actually get track transports, which means that in mech, you are not forced to bring them in the truck. Usually, you would probably prefer the truck either way. However, it means that if, for example, your recon infantry only gets the truck in mech, you're not forced to choose between those two. So that is a nice option. And in fact, in Entente, I actually do bring them in the M60 because I do prefer Karanijari over the Czech recon squad in Entente mech. That's actually a pretty rare thing, believe it or not. I don't know why. Maybe, I genuinely don't know. Maybe originally CV infantry weren't available in mech. It's actually, in my opinion, kind of an oversight that a lot of recon CV infantry don't get 5-pointers. But then again, I have to be completely honest with you. It's not like mech decks particularly needed the buffs, so in hindsight, it's pretty much whatever. This is also worth pointing out. One of 2, I believe, the only other one being the Italian Jeep CV. That's actually, I believe, the exact same Jeep in real life, at least. So Jeep CV with 120 kilometers off-road speed helps massively with its survivability, assuming, of course, you pay attention to when it gets shelled or something. Still, of course, 5 HP. So anything that hits it is gonna kill it, basically. BRDM is fine, but nothing spectacular. T55. M84, not the tankiest of tank CVs. That's good front and side armor. Only 2 top armor, though. However, at the same time, again, 75 km off-road speed can help quite a bit with its survivability. And it also fights back, right? One of the... probably actually the second strongest tank CV in the game after the T8 UK. Leopard 2 and the Chieftain, to an extent, can also fight back, but this one, especially like when you're sitting in the forest, of course, and enemy tank or vehicle drives up close, it will pack a punch, right? It's worth pointing out. But unlike other tank CVs at this price range, it only has 2 top armor. Abrams, Chieftain, Leopard 2, they all have 3, which is also worth noting. Honestly, I never see this, and there's pretty much never a reason to take this. It's just very, very slow, and you really care about your off-road speed on CVs. 15 and 40 point supply trucks, also one of the reasons why I like Entente, because it gives you the option for 30.1. I'm not a huge fan of either. 20 and 30 point supply trucks are always my favorite, but it's just preference, really. Bob and then HG40. Infantry, Britska are interesting. One of the few line infantry that are both 15 points and light. Right? Light, of course, means you're faster. You have the same speed as basic shock infantry, which is, of course, always neat. Speed helps a lot with survivability, and also to an extent, of course, lethality of infantry. the biggest draw really is just 15 HP and recoilless rifle. That just goes well. Those two abilities, I don't want to call it, but stats, whatever you want to call it, really go well together. They work very well defensively in a town, especially defending against mech or moto assaults that tend to be low on armor. You double tap up to 7 armor, which is actually quite a bit. Even Marder 2s actually get double tapped. Obviously, you don't one-shot anything unless it's 1 armor or lower, but you have a lot of range. You have decent accuracy, believe it or not. 40% is okay. And 15 AP is actually quite a bit for recoilless rifles. There's not a lot that have that much, especially at that range. It's like, what, the Tankeshasha 85 of China, as well as the Finnish, and of course nowadays the Alpini 90, but it's really the exception rather than the rule. And then they're also pretty affordable. However, they also only come with a 15-point transport. So that really hampers them quite a bit. I think if they were in a 10-point or even a 5-point transport, you see them a good chunk more. They're okay at fighting infantry. They have to have basic assault rifle and an MG3. For the price, though, they're not that strong. Defensively, of course, they're really just defensive squads. Assaulting with them, not that great. What they can be useful for though, if you're assaulting like between forests at an open ground where there's like 1,000 meters or something open ground between them, then it helps to deal with like light vehicles that are just out of range of your other infantry-based AT weapons, and that's where they can like pop a squad, a vehicle or two. Other than that, it's mainly defensive squad. You can't really. I mean, technically you can, of course. They're not that great at sneaking around because outside of like sniping like 1 armor or 0 armor vehicles, they're pretty easy to deal with when they're on their own. Mechani Sovana, a very good line infantry squad, right? SMG is of course not great. MG3 though, or a stat clone of an MG3, is very good. For 10 points especially. The AT weapon isn't great, but it is worth pointing out that while it doesn't have the rate of fire of like an M72 law, it is probably still quote-unquote top-tier anti-tank for 10 points. Like, you like the range. It's not an RPG-7. RPG-7 is, in my mind, like the best you can get for 10 points, because it's 700 meters range. But you have 50% accuracy and 14 AP, which is the same AP as an RPG-7. And in forests, with a higher base accuracy, you should be more accurate. So it's still more than fine. But of course, the biggest draw is their transports. Specifically the BVP M88, which, even after its accuracy nerf, is still very good. Very high rate of fire. And the Mayotka that can fire at the same time, which means it's not useless. And the M60PB, which is also good. In case you don't know, the M60PB, it can fire its recoilless rifles, because there are 2, right? The 2 recoilless rifles. It can fire them in very quick succession. There it is, right? Salvoing 2 shot reload 1 second, right? So it fires, reloads 1 second, and fires the second one. Then has to reload for 8 seconds. That helps quite a bit. It used to have more range, but that range got fortunately nerfed. But it's still a very good transport, just overshadowed by the BVP. But them being spammed in a PB, also very much a viable thing. The other BVPs, they offer a better AT weapon, especially the 25.1 with 26 AP. These Malutkas are also faster, right? You can see Cyclops, not M-Class anymore, than your normal Malutkas. In fact, let me just briefly show that to you, because I think that is a very important thing to those. It's the basic PvP, right? You can see the Malutka very slow, 400 and 500. And if you look at the other BVPs, Malutka P1, 1500, same with the 2T. So they're a good chunk faster. Not the fastest missiles out there, but more than usable. And a better autocannon, of course. They now have 30% accuracy, lower rate of fire, but more AP and range. Base one only is 1575. But they run out of ammo very quickly, so be aware of that. 20.1 even has a PKT on top of that, which is, nice to have. And the M96 even has medium optics. However, at 25 points, it's still only 3 armor, which is more than fine for 15 points. But at 25 points, especially when you have like a 2T, like a very good ATGM, an extra armor or 2 would be very helpful to, for one, survive other IFVs, but also to make sure that you aren't as easily one-shot by tanks anymore when you want to actually stay alive for a good chunk just to get the 2T out there. These are also fired in salvos of 2, right? So one is being fired and immediately the next one before you have to reload for 10 seconds. Still, if you're using them, I would suggest running them with Proletari, if you want to run them cheap with the base ones, because for 5 points more, you get a higher veterancy, right? And you really want that with only 40% base accuracy, in my opinion, right? And it's 35 points versus 40 points for the combo, at which point extra 5 points is not as big of a deal. That doesn't mean that this is a bad combo, just, something worth pointing out. Melodic patch, there's actually no reason to ever take them, honestly. They're quite literally a stat copy, or mostly a stat copy of like base Rima. If you Arak F1 and a very basic MG and an assault rifle. Rima might have a battle rifle, which actually makes it better. Excuse me, voice crack. Actual voice reveal here. No, joking. They're just incredibly just bland, and there's just no purpose for them in this deck or in any deck that are available, honestly. Their AT isn't great. The infantry capabilities are pretty meager. They're worse than base Proletari against infantry. And the transports are incredibly basic as well. Just, they never really take, there's no point. Palopranzi base, they're fine. They have an assault rifle, they have an MG3. They're solid against infantry, right? Actually, for the price, pretty solid. Elrak is okay. They're fine 30-point elite squad, nothing crazy. But Franzi 90 are actually worse against infantry because the M84 is worse than the MG3, or the MG42 or the M53, whatever. But obviously they have the Boomba, right? They're basically a must-take for the Boomba, which is an even better Eric's with 1 more AP. Now, whether or not it is like a 2006 missile that deserves to be in Wargame or not, I've also heard, by the way, that there's been like prototypes before 2006 or whatever. I'll be honest, personally, I don't care. I realize that a lot of people do, but it is in a game. It's not gonna go away, right? So get your memes out of the way now, I suppose. The squad itself is obviously very strong. Also an SMG for the primary weapon, which is strong. On elites, SMGs are very, very good. In fact, it's an SMG with extra range, so it's a good chunk better, believe it or not. Well, believe it or not, obviously you're gonna believe it. It's just a straight up bonus. It's a very good squad. It's still very good against infantry despite having worse MG. I've said it many, many times. Basically, the higher you're training, the more important your primary becomes compared to your MG. And obviously, vice versa, the lower your training goes. Which is why having MG3 and SMG is so much better in line infantry than having, let's say, a battle rifle and a bad MG. The Drugs, very good squad. And in Unspec or Mech, or whenever you have the 5-pointer available, arguably like a, well, definitely in my opinion at least, a top 5 AGM squad. And you could honestly argue for it being like the best AGM squad in the game, because there's such a good combination of like stats, but also points and availability, right? Spikes, they're amazing, no question. But like they're also 6 per card. These guys are 12 per card, 20 points including a 5-pointer, right? A pop. They have solid range and accuracy and still 20 AP to one-shot up to 6 armor and double tap up to 12 armor. And still more than a threat to like medium tanks as well as side shots when it comes to super heavies, right? Incredibly, the value proposition of this card is so incredibly high, right? Again, you get 12, that's twice as many as you get on spikes, which have 1 more AP. Obviously, they're also a lot more accurate and a lot faster, and the spike LR has a good an additional range step. But also, you only get half of them, right? For like 10 points more or something as well. They're incredibly efficient for what they cost, and incredibly efficient per card, right? 15 in Yugoslavia or 12 in Entente is so strong. And even in the BVP, it's a good card, right? Because then, you always want an IV around. And Tab 71 or in Moto, they're not as great anymore, because then I have 30 points versus like 35 or 40 of other squads. Not that big of an advantage anymore, but it's still 12 per card. Incredibly good squad. and I do like the basic 10.8 gem squads as well, but in this deck, when you have the Drooks available, no reason to take them. Like for 5 points more, you get like a very good chunk of stats here that is worth it. It's still a good card, don't get me wrong, but unless you're playing like 85 or 80, no real reason to take them, honestly. And in mech, usually I like to run 2 cards of 80 gems in many decks. In this case, you only really need this card. Even in Entente, I don't really run Conqueror's M and just run 1 card of these. It's so good. Proletary base, they're basically, well, the squad itself is basically like Modritzen but worse, right? The M72 Law is not very good. The RPG7 is a good chunk better, but at the same time, they're 50 points shock with a good MG. And of course, I have the same transports available as Mechani Savannah. So pretty much the same thing applies here. I like to take a card of them in the PvP M80A. It's still a very good combination and gives you a squad that is pretty strong at town fighting, which Mechani Savannah are not. And if I run a expensive PvP, I like to run them in a base Proletary to still have it somewhat affordable, but at a higher veterancy. And of course, Proletary 90, incredibly strong as well. Very good anti-time card, and one of the best in the game. Basically an Apilas with 1 more AP, which is good. And the additional AP means, for example, now you can double tap 16 armor as opposed to 15. Now you can one-shot 10 armor as opposed to 9. Now you can triple tap 19 armor as opposed to 18, right? 1 extra AP, the higher you go in AP is so much, is worth quite a bit actually. Incredibly strong against vehicles, still very formidable against infantry, not on the same level against infantry as, let's say, Rima, because Minimi is better than the M82, but still very capable, and also has the same great transports available. The only thing worth pointing out, of course, is the 5-pointer is a pretty bad 5-pointer, right? 2 MGs is nice within 50 cal, but 1 armor, but honestly, most importantly, 45 kmh off-road speed can be annoying, and while it doesn't suddenly make the squad in any way bad, it is at least something that is not great about the squad, let's put it that way, right? Strata 2MA are actually kind of okay. I would never take them because you have an Igla squad available, but at least there is Strela with 4 HE, so there's something that is usable, if they were the only squad available. But you have Igla, and Igla squads are always good. Also worth pointing out, the Iglas have the PvPs available, but usually when you're playing mech and you run the Shilos, probably use all your PvP M80As on other squads, personally. Because I also like to run a card of Proletary 9 into PvP in my mech decks, so that I have a transport that is somewhat affordable and has decent off-road speed, unlike the M60P. But yeah, that's always, of course, a good combination. And the TOs are just reservists with they're 10 plus 5, so 15 HP and a 5-pointer. 5-pointer is fine. It doesn't have great autonomy, but very good off-road speed. 50 cal with 1 armor is okay. And the squad itself is as basic as it gets. Personally, in Entente, I prefer the Jack reservists. Support. Prachka is quite literally a Crotal, well, when it comes to game, right? But literally, basically, or quite literally, get it together, Razzmann. But it's essentially a Crotal with half the missiles. It's also 20 points cheaper. But yeah, 260% very high range non-radar missiles. It's good. It's fine. I usually don't run it, but it doesn't mean it's bad by any means. It's just awkward to use because basically immediately you have to get a supply truck. Which, if you run this unit, that is definitely an argument to run the 15-point supply truck. Basically, like, when you buy this, just buy a supply truck with them. And then for 55 points, let's see. Oh no, the armor tool doesn't like my normalcy. Instead of like the C with the thing there. It's 102 per shot, so you almost get 8 missiles out of 50 points supply truck. So let's just say 7. So for 55 points, you get a Prachka. A Crotal with 9 shots instead of 4, and 5 points cheaper. just keep in mind that you have to reload for 10 seconds after all the two missiles, right? So against individual targets or a plane where you usually don't get more than 1 or 2 missiles off, technically you shouldn't notice a difference. But if there's multiple helicopters or you miss one of your shots against a single helicopter, then it becomes awkward, right? And that's where having 4 instead of 2 missiles is really nice. Even if, when you buy it with the supply truck, you technically get a lot more missiles. M4 is fun to spam with its cheap price. It vets up very quickly after kills, so increased veterancy not only means more accuracy, but higher crit chance. And critting pains is always fun. Practically, it's not very strong, but it can be fun to do. Neva M1 is basically a book M1, or the Polish Neva, or a Cup M4. Yeah, 4 missiles, decently fast off-road, obviously very fast on-road. It's fine. Neva M1T, of course, is big deal. Essentially like a Eotsog, but a good chunk more accuracy. Yeah, there it is. Eotsog only has 50% accuracy. I think the Eotsog, though, has full range. Does the Eotsog has the 450, or does it also only have... I actually don't use the Eotsog very often. No, the Eotsog also. No, the Eotsog has it's the same stat as the Eotsog, but 10% more accuracy. 20 points more as well, but also 10% more accuracy, right? Which is really, really good. In a team game, honestly, a must-have. In 1 versus 1s, you can definitely live without this. If you're running unspec, it's probably still worth using. But it's also, you notice the 95 points and not more. It also kind of depends on how you want to build your deck. Do you want to build it more on, let's say, a slow kind of game, right? Lots of artillery, lots of usage with your fob. Definitely go for it. If you're more like a early pusher, right, you maybe don't run a fob, definitely an argument to run like something like an OSA AKM, where for cheaper you get more missiles, so you don't have to supply it. It's also more versatile because it has more range versus helicopters. You know, and not a must-have. Probably still worth running down 1 versus 1s. It is worth pointing out, if you don't run a fob, a single missile costs 175.5 supplies. So a 800 point supply jack will give you like 4 missiles. No, 5 even. Yeah. It's very, very strong, I think, for obvious reasons. And unlike the Eotsog with decent off-road speed at 150 kilometers on-road speed, much harder to also snipe. Strela 1, one of the many in the game, it's no real purpose for it in this deck. It's actually kind of an okay unit. It's just most of the time you either have man pads or you have like a buff 3 available as well, so no real reason in this specific deck. Assuming you're playing unspec, of course. When you're playing like Cat B or Cat C, these things change, of course. But for 25 points, it's generally not a horrible unit. Strela 10 is a fine unit, right? Basically, it's a 10M. I don't know why it's called 10 here. It's fine, it's good, but it's obviously overshadowed by the Sava. It does cost a good chunk more, it has to be said, right? 20 points, almost 50% more, but also like a good chunk more range, good chunk more accuracy, and of course still non-radar. And it does come with 12 missiles, and you really do notice the range and accuracy on this thing. It hits like a truck, it hits very frequently. The 6 HP also means it's gonna one-shot Lynxes and Panthers, which is nice. Very, very good unit. I'll be honest though, these days I wouldn't necessarily call it a must-have anymore, right? Especially in team games when you probably run the Neva M1T. What role does it have? Like anti-helicopter maybe? And it's not that great against helicopters, it's good, right? But it doesn't outrange like a longbow or something, right? It is a lot stronger in my opinion in like 1 versus 1s in mech decks, right? Where you're playing relatively wide and maybe not going so much into super heavy, so planes aren't as important anymore, or you just want to set it and forget it and don't have to worry about resupply. That does mean, of course, it's bad to run, right? I'm just saying that it's very, very good. Just depending on 1 versus 1s or team games, I think it's kind of overkill to run both. It's usually probably best to run one or the other, depending on how you build your deck and how you play it. But that is if you really want to hugely optimize it, in my eyes at least. if you still want to run the deck at like 99% efficiency, you can definitely run both, right? It's not. Don't let me tell you that it's bad to run both or something. It's a 30-point motor. It's fine. It's okay. It has a good amount of ammo. Bad chassis though, with like low speed. But at the end of the day, it's a 30-point motor that just works. My preferred artillery in mech or armored, because you don't get like a tracked howitzer or MLRS in this deck. It's actually very good. Again, right, I have to keep saying this. 5 HE howitzers are much stronger than 5 HE mortars. It's cheap. It carries a lot of ammo and has good availability. You just keep shelling an area with this thing. It's decently accurate as well, while not being too accurate. It's a very good artillery piece. Swastika kind of does the same thing. On paper, stronger. In practice, not so much, because this thing only has a 20-second aim time. This has 25. It's also a bit more expensive. You get fewer of them, and it carries a lot less ammo. This thing you can easily run without a fob. Swastika is a bit more awkward. The Nora B is... I always forget. I actually don't run this a lot, because in the deck that you would mostly run this, you also get the Plummen, and I usually just go for the Plummen. That said, it is basically SSR. In fact, it's even better than SSR because it carries more ammo. Although it does have less range. And at that range, sometimes you actually do notice this on like big maps like Highway or like some big T maps. You might actually notice the range. That said, it's a very solid howitzer. It's a good howitzer, right? Above 3 versus above 30. The eternal debate. Personally, I'm more of a above 3 enjoyer. The above 30 for more points offers more range, worse DPS. It has a shot reload of 0.4 as opposed to 0.3. The above 30 does fire in its entire magazine. However, the sub length of 30 is so long that you rarely will notice the above 3 ever having to reload. It will rarely shoot for so long that it's gonna fire 30 rounds and then have to reload. It also carries a lot more ammo though, to be fair. Yeah, you pay for more range, but lower rate of fire. You get increased accuracy as well, to be fair. It doesn't, assuming the above 3 is in range to fire, I don't think it makes up for the lower accuracy, lower rate of fire quite as much. But obviously it just costs more, right? The above 3 at 30 points is much more affordable, and you get more of them as well. 12 instead of 10. Base at least. It's more affordable to use for like base defense and such. That said, if you want to use it more offensively, the above 30 definitely will help, because the range will mean that you're able to shoot at helicopters before they shoot at you, of course, right? It depends on what you want to use this for. More offensively or more defensively. That is really what it comes down to, honestly. And the Fokker is very basic. It's a basic but fine spec. It's basically a Gepard, really. Same rate of fire, almost the same accuracy. It has as A1 for the same price, right? The A1 does have 10% more accuracy, which is actually quite a bit. It's still fine, but the thing is, you just never see it because you have so many good options and so many good non-radar options, right? You're not rarely is the anti-air tip, and especially in Yugoslavia, but also on Taunch as non-radar, right? And that's just very nice and very comfy, never having to worry about seed, really. So while it's more than fine, there's just very little reason to use this, because even in mech or mech or armored, you also have the Safa 10, which offers the same range, is non-radar, and for 10 points more. Also actually not much better against planes, but more accurate. Organj, I think I used this not long ago when I was playing, I believe, support. It's Napalm MLRS, which tend to not be that great unless they're like a Buratino. That doesn't mean it's inherently bad. It's not like a BM24 with only 12 rounds. It's fine. It's just that it's just so good. The Orkan is an interesting unit. On paper, it's actually like very, very good. It does have the 30 seconds aim time though, and that is really annoying. It is really, really annoying. yeah, that's what holds it back. In team games or something, it might be better, especially like in stalemates where the aim time is not that relevant. But like in smaller games, it's very very annoying to have this long aim time, especially when you want to split your salvo if you just want to snipe like some low armor targets where like 1 or 2 hits are gonna be enough. Flamen, of course, incredibly good MLRS, very versatile, aims very fast, has very good rockets, is pretty accurate, right? So it's gonna be very very consistent, and you can even smoke. It is one of the best MLRS systems in the game. While it's not like individually as strong as like Uragan at like stopping an entire push, it also has a much higher uptime, right? It has salvo rule of 64 seconds, right? You can fire a salvo every minute, which is crazy strong. It aims very fast, and while it does have a low range, so having your resupply bit like near fob on bigger maps means that there will be a longer downtime than just 1 minute every now and then. It also means that your opponent has much less time to react to the incoming salvo. It is very, very good. Honestly, a must-have, despite its numerous nerfs. Tanks. Very strong tank tap. I think most people know that. And one of the strengths is the V-Horse being so goddamn fast. It has so much with its survivability. It also has very good autonomy, unlike the T80, which is also very fast, but lacks autonomy. A base V-Horse is kind of similar to a Leopard 2A4. It gains 1 AP but loses 1 armor. The armor loss, I think, is... I'd rather have the armor than the AP, but it's, still tanky enough. However, that does mean that like a Peace Shrine or like a YH7, sorry, JH7, the Chinese ATGM plane, or like other 26 AP missiles will double tap, or like a A10 or longbow. That is definitely worth mentioning. You have 10 RPM though, and you have 10 KPM H advantage over the Leopard 2A4 for the same price. In compared to like if you had that, for the same price, you trade 1 armor for 1 AP and you gain 1 RPM and 10 HP at 10 kmh. For many other tanks in this price range, definitely an upgrade compared to like a Leopard 2A4 specifically. And against some matchups, I think you would definitely prefer the Leopard 2A4, but on the other hand, of course, right? Having 10 RPM guaranteed with an outloader versus many other tanks having 9 RPM always means you will get the second shot out more often. The increased speed means they will basically never run away from you and break line of sight unless like with smoke or something. Those are some very good upsides, though, it has to be said. So that helps a lot. And of course, the speed does help to make sure that you or increase your chances of getting back into cover before those missiles come flying out of the plane. M91A still just as fast. Compared to other tanks in this price range, it essentially trades 1 AP or 1 armor for an additional RPM. It definitely is, unless you're fighting in close ranges, worse in super heavy versus super heavy fights, because those tend to be at long distances and the extra AP or armor matters a lot more, especially because you tend to peekaboo a lot. That said, of course, it is just bullying lower tier tanks very well. Similarly to a Leclerc or Kiyomaru, and with the increased speed, it of course also means, survivability and running down tanks very, very strong. A very good super heavy is one of the better ones for sure, but then again, even a bad super heavy is still a super heavy, right? This is just bad. Not even an MG. Like when for the same price you get an M47 Patton, which has more armor, 3 HE, a 50 cal, even better off-road speed. There's no reason to ever take this when you have this available. Same with the T34. Just run it M47. M47 is actually a pretty solid spam tank. Good at like tanking damage against low AP guns or autocannons because of its 4 armor. It's never gonna run out of fuel realistically. It has good infantry DPS. Not the strongest gun against vehicles, but it's gotta have a downside somewhere, right? T55 ATLD. Yeah, it's doesn't really have a purpose. The Igmine is actually very interesting, because for 40 points you get a full range, albeit low AP gun with 60% accuracy, and acceptable ATGM that can also be fired at the same time. A decent speed on a T55. This is actually kind of an okay tank. It's like sort of bully IVs and similar, right? It's gonna one-shot with its missile up to 3 armor. The only real downside is it doesn't have medium optics, but that's probably the only thing that keeps it somewhat balanced against like motor decks and such. It is actually a pretty formidable tank. If this was in the recon tab, this would be actually kind of ridiculous, I'll be honest. This is I think, severely underrated tank. It is mainly being held back by the fact that this deck, or Entente, like so many other tools that usually deals with whatever this would deal with, that it's getting overshadowed. It's actually a very good unit, honestly. Igman, like it's actually also kind of an okay tank, right? T55, there's decently mobile with medium optics, a full range accurate gun. Who knew? Who thought it would be possible, right? This is probably one of the few very good T55s, well, including the Finnish ones. It is fine medium tank. Again, mainly not seen because this price range, also like this kind of does a similar job sometimes. And again, you have like T55A in the recon tab. You have lots of like cheap ATGMs available. And usually, you're busy spamming M84As. But it's a solid tank. In Moto, definitely like a must-have. And Entente Moto, while not being like a strong tank, it's fine, right? Your best tank available. One more T72M, fine. Honestly, probably better off using a T55A, right? Worse HE output, but better range, better accuracy. M84 base, it's just a tad too expensive. It got a price buff from 75 to 70, but yeah, it doesn't do much. It would need medium optics, or it would need to be cheaper to see like proper meta relevance. It's like usable, but it doesn't do too well against like the medium tanks you see, and with poor optics, it can be very vulnerable. And it doesn't share the same speed as the M84A does. Speaking of, got nerfed? No, it didn't get nerfed, right? It got the 8 RPM already in the South Africa DLC, I think. Still, it's a very good tank, obviously, right? There's a reason you see it all the time, or it's basically a must-take in Entente. It punches up very well against similar tanks very well, and down decently as well. Only 2 top armor, but that's really the only downside it has. Incredibly accurate, especially having an autoloader. Usually autoloader tanks on Red 4 have not so great accuracy. Very fast, medium optics. Only 8 RPM in quotes, but like it is so accurate. It is so strong. 19 AP is very strong. 15 armor isn't the best for 95, but it's usually good enough. Yeah. Also, 19 AP is like a breakpoint of hitting the AP cap in force, right? Which is worth pointing out. Basically meaning that in force, this gun is just as good as like any super heavy gun in terms of AP. Recon tab, Granichari, incredibly basic regular recon squad, but they have the buff MP86, which is fun. But yeah, they're just a recon squad, nothing special about them. Hera is fine. This Hera is very, very good. Cheap, good optics recon helicopters are very strong in the game because it means that for very cheap, you can in the opener just see where is the opponent pushing, what do they have, are they motor, are they mech, do they have lots of helicopters, and if it just gets through to the enemy base or something because the opponent doesn't care, it has some weaponry to kill, for example, a recon cheap, a CV cheap, right? So it can't really be ignored. And usually having good, very good or exceptional optics is not that big of a difference if all you care about is having a rough estimate of where the opponent is pushing, right? So you don't want to overpay for something that's gonna die anyway. Okay, Jeep, who cares? Greyhound, it's fine. In Moto, definitely worth using a card of because it's so cheap and still has a weapon. Similarly to the Hera, your opponent can't just ignore it. And it's actually like en masse, like decent infantry fire support as well. It's gonna get absolutely shreked by anything with like a proper gun or autocannon, but everything else is actually quite nice to have. Also just dirt cheap, you know. ERDM2, yeah, similar story, except that it's not that great fire support, but if it gets through, it can just kill like a GVCB. This is just bad. All the Pragas, they're just not good. They're just not good. They have horrible rate of fire. 0.6. Incredibly low rate of fire, low base accuracy, not the best range. It is affordable, but a valuable recon slot for this is not worth it. it is just not worth it. Its ground range is, if it had like increased ground range and like on like an AP variant with like increased ground range or something as well, maybe it would be okay, but not like this. It's not very good. Don't use this unit. It's incredibly bad. Okay, incredibly bad might be an exaggeration, but it's just bad. IB M80A is fine. It's kind of like a only red for equivalent to a Bradley, honestly. There's, I guess, the Concourse carrier that North Korea has, but this is really the closest thing. ATGM autocannon on like a tracked APC, recon APC, if you will, recon AFV. And does have exceptional optics. 60 points. I mean, if you compare this to other exceptional optics vehicles, for 10 points, practically you get an autocannon and an ATGM versus like a Brom on a BRM1. So, you know, one of the few that I personally think are worth using. It's not the best, right? It's not even an ITO variant comparable ATGM, right? You have less range, accuracy, and AP. Still, though, you at least one shot up to 3 armor. It's a okay autocannon, but still low ammo. 3 armor is fine, but not the best. It's an okay unit. If it had a 26 AP missile, though, it would be crazy. It also carries 12 of them, right? Which is nice. It's fine. Usually just don't have the slot available because you have these two recon tanks, which are both very, very good. Senke, they're like the Raki, right? They have even more range than the Canadian anti-material rifle, which I think only have 1575. They have 1750, even more. They're, again, kind of a meme in the sense that usually if you want to use them best, you're probably best off just not having them fire unless they are in range of like a deep CV. Yeah, it's more of a gimmick than an actual like usable thing. SVD 84N, amazing, of course. 84N got a nerf to 3 per card, but they're available in model now, which is very nice. And the SVD is basically, it's a very good recon tank, right? It has good accuracy, decent range, and gun stats, 50 cal, good, fast enough, and just very cheap for what it offers, right? Unlike the basic T55 for 25 points, you get the MG, you get the 40% as opposed to like 30% accuracy, which helps so much. It's a good recon tank. And 84N, I think not much needs to be said, right? Recon M84, it's just very strong. Vehicle type, so Raketage. Now that thing got changed massively with the Italy patch. Now 2,450 meters range, so you outrange pretty much any tank gun. One of them has napalm on top of HE, very good damage output. Also blocks line of sight with a fire, which is worth pointing out. It's a very good long range fire support. It actually has usage now. Marutka is bad. Polo is fine. Again, also faster Malutka here on this thing, and with 17 AP can one-shot up to 3 armor. Fires 3 in a row before having to reload. But with Malutka's not so great range and 1 armor, it's very easy to just get killed. But at the same time, you're very cheap. It's not the worst unit out there, let's put it that way. Polo, my beloved. I love this thing. Has 2 M Malutkas, which aren't the 2T with 26. We only, quote unquote, only have 24 AP, but 50% accuracy as opposed to 40. And with 3 armor, it means that you need to be, or the enemy tank needs to have 21 AP at full range to kill you at max range, right? So you can often tank a shot while still firing away. And with so many missiles, you just don't have to worry about it wasting missiles. It fires a lot of them in a row before having to reload. It's set it and forget it for cheap, lots of AP, good availability. Very underrated unit. M107 with the cheap ATGM. Actually not horrible because it's so goddamn fast. I put this in my mech deck sometimes just to sneak around the map. It's not as good as like an autogunner or something to sneak around because it can't fire at the move. On the move, it has to keep side and all that. But it's so fast and so cheap that if you can just put it in your deck without having to really, remove anything important, it's just nice to have because it's so cheap. It's fine, it's good. This thing, I guess, kind of similar, but it's 5 points more. And if you just want to use 1 or 2 or something to sneak around the map, then it doesn't really matter how much AP to have. If all you want to snipe is like 1 armor CV or something. That said, it's still fine, I guess. And with the off-road speed, it's easier to like juke tanks, right? Praga has the same issue as the recon type variant. It does have a kinetic variant that has more range versus ground, but low range versus helicopters, but even less accuracy and still the very low rate of fire. Do not bother with this. Do not bother with this. Hellcat and S90, kind of like Blue Dragons, which have the M18 and the M36. However, the Yugoslav M36 has a better engine, so more speed and autonomy, which deservedly, by the way, bumps it up to 15 points. At which point it's not that great anymore, but in mech with on elite or something can be worth using. Usually you're better off just spamming the M47 in the tank tab though, because it gets increased armor and 50 cal, which is very, very nice. That said, it's not like this is horrible. Again, especially in mech, it does have 40% base accuracy with decent range, which is not to be underestimated. And in mech, when you get it on elite, that's nice. Helicopters, the Gammas, they're both actually pretty solid, right? They don't carry a lot, and the Gamma 2 only is an Igla 1, not a base Igla, so it only gets 40%, not 55% accuracy. But then you have to keep in mind, these things are dirt cheap and very fast. And they actually carry two kinds of ammo. And the Gamma 2, I think, is one of the most underrated helicopters in the game. If you compare this like a 40-point hot helicopter, which is also very good, you get 2 additional AP and an Igla 1, like 2 Igla 1s, just quote-unquote for free. This is very, very good. Just don't view this as an anti-air helicopter. View this as like a cheap anti-tank or anti-IV helicopter that occasionally might like kill a Hurricane helicopter or be useful to at least deny like a space from helicopters, right? Just don't use this specifically to protect your like in like the opener. Don't view this as an anti-air helicopter. View this as like a Gazelle Hunt with, oh, it has an Igla that might be useful at times, right? That's how you should view this. And even the 30-point Gamma is actually not too bad. That said, for 10 points, you should always go for the Gamma too. Similar story between these two helicopters when it comes to like low tier and high tier, except the low tier variant is not very good. High tier variant is quite fine. It's kind of like an MI-17. It has a unique fire pattern on its rocket stove where it fires like 4 in a salvo. Which, however, does help of like with like reducing it wasted shots, right? The MI-17s tend to waste a lot of shots because of its high rate of fire. But this one, not so much. The rockets are pretty strong as well. It's like when in Yugoslavia, it's like a good useful when you don't have MI-17s available, or an on-taunt mech where you don't get MI-17s either, but you get this. It's like a nice unit to use instead. And then lastly, air. Orao base, not very good. Honestly, if you want to use an HE bomber, just go with the L15M. Orao cluster is actually kind of okay. You get 3 of them, which is nice. Acceptable payload, especially for the price. Not the best speed, but at least you get some ECM. It's fine. It's fine. Orao 2, kind of like a Peace Rhine, but unlike a Peace Rhine, because it has ground ordnance only, which is like a good rule of thumb, it flies lower, which obviously worsens its survivability, lowers its survivability, despite having like the same ECM. Right, flight altitude 500 was 1000, so you're in range more easily and stay in range longer. Which is why maybe it feels like it has lower survivability than other 30% ECM planes. That's just something to keep in mind, and it can be frustrating sometimes, honestly. So as a rule of thumb, if your plane doesn't have any missiles, like an ATGM plane or a bomber, it flies lower than pretty much than similar planes with missiles. It's, yeah. Saber, it's a fun unit because it can literally fire its rockets at any target. Isn't very great at anything though. It just looks funny. Yastreb is just an okay rocket plane. One of the only 2 planes, or one of the very few planes with the Browning, which means that it cannot fire the 25T or the A10, or any plane with 2 armor anywhere, which is pretty funny. The payload is fine, even as napalm with AG, but it's just slow, no ECM, right? Usually you want your rocket plane to at least be fast, or be very, very cheap, but 70 is not that cheap anymore. L12, it's like a MiG-21, like a very fast plane with very low missiles, or very like 2 missiles that are not very good. If you just want like a scout plane for team games or something, to scout for a helo rush or like a aggressive helicopter drop, you can use this. But usually you have the L17K in your deck anyway, right? It's very strong helo hunter, 3-on veteran, 2 sets of missiles, which helps a lot because they're gonna fire simultaneously. It's so much better than having just 6 good missiles, right? Having 4 of these and an additional set of that helps so much with killing helicopters in one pass, especially. Very nice. And should it, of course, get in range of like enemy ASFs or something, it will be very deadly there too. L18 is essentially like a polished MiG-29, but you lose 10% ECM for 5 points less. So it's still fine, but usually you're just better off running the L19. It gets a 65% French missiles, fire and forget, 4 of them, and 2 short-range missiles, which is pretty much ideal. It's basically like the Block 52, the American one, but better medium-range missiles. 40% ECM is good, 2 per card, very good ASF. Maybe the second best ASF card, right? I suppose like value per card, while also having very strong individual plane value, so to speak. Best one in my opinion being the KWS. M15M, it's like a good around plane. It's like Jack of all trades but master of none when it comes to bombers. It's still pretty deadly versus anything really. It's not gonna kill super heavy up from full HP. It's not gonna do a lot of like infantry killing with quote unquote only 2 bombs, but decent survivability and just good all-around purpose. Keep in mind though that it's gonna take quite a good while to drop its bombs because it doesn't drop all of them immediately. It drops them like one after the other, which can be a bit annoying. It makes it actually fly a bit deeper than if it only had 1 set of bombs. A bad napalm plane, and then of course the super Galeb, which is super, very good. With its set of missiles, it's gonna fly relatively high. The missiles have, I think it's just crazy. 60% accuracy. It's basically like a Kahu, but faster, right? It used to be 900 kmh. It fortunately got nerfed, but it's still amazingly strong, right? Not the greatest time of a target, but there's gotta be a downside somewhere. With its R60 Ammonia, the biggest thing about this is the fact that it means it flies pretty high, which helps with its survivability. Kind of a must-have. It's just incredibly good. It's an amazing sniper, right? Yeah. That's Yugoslavia. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Let me know what you think, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye.